Welcome to 5-Minute Fairy Tales. So here's how this works. I have a series of words, concepts, and phrases that often appear in these types of stories. I generate 5 of those off of my list by rolling a 10-sided die and choosing the words that are associated with the number that pops up on that die. Once those words are chosen, I set a timer at which I have 1 hour to come up with the concept for the story, write it out, and time it to make sure that it's no longer than 5 spoken minutes in length. That is what you're getting presented with today. When a word from my list appears in the story, it will also pop up on your screen. So keep an eye out for those. And without further ado, may I present to you our first 5-minute fairy tale. Once upon a time, there was a young man named Edmund. Having grown up very poor, Edmund was eager to prove himself and became quite reckless in his pursuit of fortune and fame. For a time, he worked as a blacksmith to a family of nobles who lived in town, but he had no desire to live such a difficult life. The family for whom he worked was extremely wealthy and had a beautiful daughter named Olivia. To Edmund, Olivia was irresistible. If he could win her, he would make a name for himself and become the heir to a sizable inheritance. But Olivia's family knew what a prize their daughter was. Eager to preserve her virtue until they could secure an appropriate match, her parents locked their daughter away in a tower, where she was only visited by her chambermaid and her governess. Still, Edmund refused to give up. Lowly as he was, he knew that little attention was being paid to him by his superiors, which allowed him to overhear things that would have been denied him had anyone realized that he was nearby. In this way, he learned of a secret passage that would gain him entrance to Olivia's chambers. So he snuck back onto the property in the dead of night and made his way inside. She was understandably distressed by the arrival of a strange man at the door to her bedchamber, but, isolated as she was also very lonely. So when he agreed to sit clear on the opposite side of the room and come no closer, she let him inside. She had endless questions about the outside world, questions he would answer, though he would often exaggerate his stories to make himself seem more important, more worldly, just more. He went to her every night and stayed longer and longer, despite knowing what danger he was in if he were to get caught. So naturally, one night he stayed too late. Spotted by the chambermaid, who screamed for the guards, he found himself dragged before her parents and ordered to explain himself. He told them how he loved Olivia, and at that time, he meant it. Never before had anyone listened so attentively to him. But they did not wish to hear this. Disgusted by his breach of their trust, they dismissed him. His family was devastated. Desperate to avoid the stigma of having such a son, they sent him off on the first ship out to sea, ordering him to stay away until he had made amends for his outrageous behavior. After the shame of his banishment had passed, Edmund found that he actually enjoyed life on the seas. It was far less restrictive than living on land, particularly when the captain of the vessel took a liking to him and began taking him on the sorts of adventures he had told Olivia he had already experienced. Here, his recklessness was a gift, an opportunity that allowed him to explore places where others feared to tread. On one such venture, he dove deep beneath the waves, dreaming of treasure. At first, he found none in the traditional sense, but what he found instead was far more exciting. A family of mermaids who found Edmund singularly charming. He intrigued them as much as they intrigued him, and before long, they had agreed to show him to their home and the untold riches that they kept there. What they did not tell him was that their home was not meant to be seen by human eyes, that seeing it would inspire in a mortal man a sort of unbreakable fixation on the miraculous society he had discovered. They granted him a gift in the form of a golden locket that would allow him to return to them whenever he chose, then sent him back to the shore with the promise that his efforts for success would be rewarded, as long as he kept what he had seen a secret. Whatever magic they had wrought upon him was legitimate. Before long he had amassed a powerful reputation and a great deal of wealth. The very family that had once cast him out was soon writing begging him to return. He could have his pick of the women, they said, and Olivia's family, hearing what he had become, had begun wondering when he might come back home. A celebration was planned, a feast celebrating her birth, where her family would begin talking of suitors. He should come, they said, and put his name forth. She would be lucky to have such a husband. But none of that mattered to Edmund anymore. His interest in the money, the jewels, and the attention had all but faded. He continued chasing adventure in the hope of reclaiming the excitement that had once had such a hold on him, but all he could think of were the merfolk waiting in the sea. He wrote saying he would come, but on the very day he was meant to set off, he found he could not bear the idea of returning to the place that so stifled him. Lured by the siren song of the sea, he woke early, and bringing with him the piles of treasure he had obtained, he dove overboard to rejoin the mystical mermaids that haunted his thoughts. He and all his worldly possessions were never seen on land again. Okay, so that's done. As unintentionally Grimm's Brothers as it turned out to be. So before I go, I'm going to use this handy-dandy D10 to roll the 5 words that will appear in next week's fairy tale. Alright, so next week we will have forest, pirates, ogre, poison, and flame. Okay, that'll be cheery. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Anyway, so if you enjoyed this, if you have anything you would like to see in future fairy tales, or any words that you think that I should be considering, or any opinion at all that you would care to share, feel free to leave it in the comments down below. And please subscribe, and I will see you next week with whatever on earth happens with those 5 words. Okay, bye.